Hey everyone, sorry it's a little later than usual. Lots of stuff going on. I got book 2 finished. If you're on my page, then you're probably already aware of that. Pre-order is live. We've already hit top 100 on new releases with it, which is pretty awesome. Um, Lots of stuff going on. I got 2 other books I'm working on. I haven't made an official announcement, but might as well do it here. I'm working on getting an audiobook for this book, so somebody with a little bit better voice than me can read it to you. But other than that, I guess let's get into it. And then I'm going to go get some dinner because I've been reading most of the day and not been doing much of that. So I'm going to try to do it at a slightly slower pace so I have less errors. I don't really like being up here talking to you guys. Not that I don't like talking to you, but it's an intention thing, and I'm better behind the shadows. So, Chapter 5, Wrath of Dragons. The sounds of slaughter echoed through the trees, announcing the smell of smoke in the air. It was just beginning to settle, catching the rays of sunlight layered over the, or, or rays of sunlight layering the grove in a thick cloud. Demetrix covered his ears, trying to block out the frightening noise. The screams lingered long after they'd stopped. He could barely see his sister through the smoke. He couldn't hear her words, but she was clearly screaming at him. A figure appeared behind her, more shadow than man. Demetrix lifted his trembling hand, extending his finger toward the man. What's he pointing at? The nearing footsteps caught her attention. Alexandra spun around to face the sun-gleamed edge of a sword hovering over her, poised to strike. The keen blade fell, sending a sharp pain through her chest. With a spray of blood, she flew through the air and landed roughly in a patch of daisies. Demetrix stood frozen at the spectacle. Is she dead? Who is he? Why does he want to hurt us? He glared at the man, unable to take his eyes off the tall figure. The man stepped toward him, his sword in hand, ready to cut the child down as he had his sister. Demetrix watched in horror. The echoes of pain and fear began to fade, replaced by the sounds of hooves. A rider appeared in the fog, moving quicker than any he'd seen before. The horseman drew an unnatural, dark-colored sword. As fast as he had drawn it, he brought it down on top of the man. The slender figure stood motionless for a long moment. He took a step forward and fell face first into the dense grass. The horseman continued on, coming to a stop a few feet past the children. He jumped up from his saddle and approached slowly. Demetrix, do not fear me. My name is Maius. I'm here to help. He cleaned and sheathed the wide sword. The doll-eyed child stared intently at the weapon as it disappeared into the leather cover. He had seen many swords before, but this one was different. It was made of a black metal and nearly twice as wide as his practice sword. The blade firmly secured in his sheath, he studied the man himself. He wore black armor with an hourglass inscribed on the left breastplate. Despite the dark colors he wore, the man had a familiar glow about him, almost white in color. Demetrix had seen such a glow before, but never white. The man's features were clearly human, but he felt different. Go on, Brie. My sister, Demetrix gestured toward the limp form, half buried in the grass a few feet from the dead assailant. I fear there's not much I can do for her, but I'll try. Maius turned back and scooped up the girl. Carrying her back to the boy, he laid her on her back and placed his gloved hand above her chest. Closing his eyes, he whispered a silent chant. A glowing light radiated between the two, soaking into the wound. As carefully as he could, he picked her up and gently laid her over the horse. With ease, he placed his foot in the stirrups and swung up, positioning himself in the black-colored saddle. Looking down, he extended his hand to the boy. You coming? He was a squat little thing, maybe 4 seasons. If he only knew how important he was. Demetrix took the outstretched hand and felt himself fly up into the saddle. Wiggling into place, he positioned himself at the rear so he could hold his sister in place. Maius gave a light prod, and the dark dark brown horse launched forward in smooth transition. Moments later, they were deep in the forest, leaving the boy's former life behind. Maius looked back, watching the heavy plume of smoke grow smaller in the distance. Not much longer, and it would disappear entirely behind the height of the trees. The sun was setting on the horizon when the horse finally slowed to a stop. Demetrix felt his legs throb with the change of pace. His backside was inflamed from the trip, and it wasn't often he'd been atop a horse, much less spent the better part of a day on one. Maius climbed down and helped the boy from the saddle. Kicking a pile of leaves together, he carefully placed Alexandra in the makeshift bed. Demetrix knelt down, searching the tear in her dress. It was discolored from the dried blood, but he couldn't find the wound anywhere. Did the man heal her? How is that possible? You're both from a strong race. While her body is healed, the wound cut much deeper than flesh. If she's to survive, it'll be of her own will. There's nothing more anyone can do for her but her. At least until she chooses to wake up. Maius reached into his saddlebag and grabbed a thin leather pouch. Unrolling it, he pulled a piece of dried meat and handed it to the boy. Demetrix snatched the meat from his hand and took a bite. It was a bit tough, but it was food. He wasn't used to skipping meals. Truth be told, he wasn't used to any of this. Realization set in. How long will it be before I can eat again? He thought to himself. Slowing himself, he tore a small piece off and began chewing, stuffing the remainder in his pocket. I'm glad to see you have wisdom beyond your years. Your father has taught you well. But you don't have to ration just yet. We'll camp for the night. We're about a mile from Eastwood. It won't be a long trip in the morning. When we arrive, we'll make arrangements for you to join a caravan. The boy stared at Maius. He knew something he wasn't saying. Why can't we go home? I'm sorry, but your home is gone. Your family was in hiding. I tried to reach your father before the Alfar got there, but I was too late. Had he not asked me to get you as far away from there as possible, I would have helped him hold him off. Which brings us to the next point. You and your people are being hunted by the Hydrophar. They saw me leave, so I'd imagine they'll be searching for me now. When we reach Eastwood, we must part ways so that I can draw them away from you. Why do they want to kill me? I didn't do anything to them. Maius shredded a few twigs and placed them in a pile. Life isn't always fair. People tend to fear things they don't understand. That fear often turns to hatred, and before long they start making mistakes they can't take back. He paused a moment, striking his flint. The sparks landed in the tinder and began to smoke. He gave a slow, steady breath, watching the flames flare to life, burning away the twigs. Adding a few larger sticks to the small ember, he continued. Long ago, a small faction of your people made bad choices, which resulted in dark times for all of us. Unfortunately, you're being forced to pay for those mistakes. The flame grew into a substantial fire. Would you like to do me a favor? Don't go too far, but gather some firewood, nothing bigger than your arms. Maius gave a light smile, watching the boy step into the shadows. The city of Eastwood bustled with merchants and travelers going about their daily lives. A steady roar of voices echoed in the air, preventing anyone from standing out above the others. The stretch of manure radiated from the steady supply of livestock and horses being led along the roads. Some pulled carts or wagons, while others were ushered into stalls for sale and trade. Demetrix sat at the rear of the enclosed wagon, watching out the open gate. He mindlessly kicked his legs, dangling over the edge, while Maius negotiated their deal. The dark-armored man had a way about him that others respected, or possibly feared. He couldn't be sure. The two men paused for a moment, looking over at the seemingly human child, innocently watching them. You'll take them as far as Icula? Aye, though I don't know why you'd want to send them there. Nothing but thieves and cutthroats since the Alfar marched through. Don't concern yourself with that. Osmodius works in mysterious ways. Whatever you say, I'm getting paid. That's all I care about. That you are, and extremely well, I might add. But don't let anything befall them. You have nothing to worry about. I've made the trip 3 times this year. Not so much as a broken wheel along the way. Good. Give me a word with them and I'll be on my way. I've already been paid. Do what you want. Maius approached the boy with a half-hearted smile. You ready to go? I guess. I'm not sure why we can't stay with you. You could protect us. I have other duties to attend. Besides, you'd grow tired of me after a while. I'm quite boring once you get to know me. He ruffled the boy's hair, laughing. I don't think so. I bet you could defeat anyone that came after us. He nodded to the broadsword sheathed on Maius's hip. I'd try at the very least, but I found it more effective to try and talk to an opponent first. What's that, Marcus? You'd be surprised how many problems can be solved with a few sensible words. Besides, if words fail, you can always resort to your sword afterward. That's one lesson I hope you remember, Demetrix. A premature sword slice cannot be undone. It's a warrior's duty to understand what he's fighting for and to decide if it's worth killing for. If you don't understand these two things, you're no better than the men you morally tower over. Nevertheless, take this. You'll never know when it may come in handy. Demetrix took the dagger made of the same dark material as the broadsword. Tucking it into his pants, he wrapped his arms around the armored warrior and hugged him tight. I'll miss you too. Now let's get you tucked away. It's 3 months' journey to Icula, and you'll need your rest. Maius waited for the boy to lay back and close his eyes. Safe travels, Demetrix. I look forward to our meeting again. He latched the wooden gate and unrolled the canvas flap to block out the light. His eyes shot open with a violent crash. How am I supposed to sleep with the constant bumps and screeching wagon wheels? He sat up, looking over at his sister, lying unconscious atop a pile of fur. She looked much better than she had, but he was beginning to worry she'd never wake up. Getting to his feet, he moved to the rear of the wagon and pulled the flap to the side. A brown horse with white spots trotted several feet behind them, attached to a wagon in tow. A human sat atop the coach, directing the horse. Be careful, boy. One wrong move and you'll fall. I doubt the wagon master will be able to stop before the horse tramples you. He glanced over at the man on horseback riding beside the wagon. He wore tan leather armor and carried a sword at his side. Ducking beneath the flap, Demetrix returned to his spot and laid down. The wagon hit another bump, bouncing his head off the wooden sidewall. Anger shot through him. He sat up, hearing the strangest sound he'd ever heard. The noises outside the wagon intensified. The shouts of men and the whinny of horses echoed through the thick canvas top. Some sped up while the wagon seemed to slow. The noise echoed again, chilling him to the bone. It sounded like a massive roar, rung out over a great distance. A blast of wind hit the side of the wagon, threatening to tear the top away from the supports. Screams echoed all around. Demetrix jumped up and headed towards the flap. A powerful crash hit the side of the wagon, toppling it over. He crashed into the cloth liner, feeling it tear under his forceful weight. Sunlight flashed into vision for the briefest moment, replaced by shadow. He crashed through branches and leaves, landing hard in the packed dirt at the forest floor. He rolled several times, trying to stop himself. His arms buckled under the motion, useless to him. Pain shot through. Slamming into the base of a thick tree, his vision faded to black. The sweet scent of rotting meat roused him. That would be weird. Not aroused, just roused, plain and simple. We're talking about like a 4-year-old child here, still be, fucked up like that. Anyway, the sweet scent of rotting meat roused him. The ground was hard and jagged, reminding him of the rocks along the edge of the river, though he clearly wasn't there. The air was cold and damp, but he didn't feel a breeze. His eyes shot open, and he searched for anything to tell him where he was. The cavern was larger than any he'd seen before. Discarded weapons littered the underground terrain, pieces of their owners lying with them. The stone floor was caked in a thick, soupy mixture of blood and dirt. Along the walls, piles of gold, silver, and gems were stacked perfectly into grand pyramids. Demetrix heard a deep rumble from inside the cavern. He sat up, searching for its source. His head throbbed, but the cool air was slightly soothing aside from the rancid stench that filled his lungs with each breath. He couldn't see as well as he used to. Even the caves around the river, when his father used to take him, weren't as dark as this one. It was expected for his kind to see in pitch black. This wasn't natural. Two thin yellow lines appeared in the far end of the chamber, rapidly growing into massive orbs several sizes larger than the child. He peered up at the massive glowing eyes. A deep fear enveloped him, stronger than any fear he'd felt before. Yet somehow he was able to control it. He was scared, that much was certain, but it felt as if a stronger force pushed back. Something inside him was protecting him from it. Yes, there it is. The deep, gravelly voice shook the cavern to its core. I knew I smelled a dollar eye among those humans. Tell me, boy, where were you going? He stared at the disembodied orbs filling the base of the voice thrum throughout his body. Should I answer? Why does it want to know? That's none of your business. Where's my sister? He clenched his fist, demanding answers. A sinister laughter echoed throughout the stone chamber, knocking several of the stalactites from the ceiling. They crashed down, breaking against the equally hardened floor. You amuse me, son of Asteria. Though do not mistake my amusement for patience. Why was a child of the Dollar Eye in the company of a band of human traitors? Why do you want to know? He squinted at his eyes, hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature in the shadow. Again, you answer with question. I'll make you a deal. Answer my question, and I'll let you know. You can return to whatever life you came from. Or answer my question, and I'll let you go. You can return to whatever life you came from, and can even take as much treasure from this place as you can carry, if it'll ease your living. He searched the shadows, studying the silence. What can it learn from the truth? It's not like I have some big secret. The treasure would help me to find Alexandra. How do I know you're telling the truth? He asked. No sooner than the question escaped his lips, the shadow moved closer, resolving into a huge scaled-covered snout with 4 barbed horns curling around from the creature's head. 2 extended out and wrapped around those like a ram, while the other 2 arched up and back, lining the sides of its massive head. Hundreds of teeth, each one larger than his entire body, lined its clenched jaw, while the nostrils pulsed as if they were smelling him. Because I'm a dragon, and dragons always keep their word. Demetrix took in the sight of the great black. He couldn't understand how he was able to resist fleeing at the beast's sight. Every muscle in his body wanted to run as far and as fast as he could in the opposite direction, but he held fast, trusting the feeling in his gut. Do we have an agreement? The dragon cocked his head, waiting for a response. Fine, I'll answer your question, but I want to know what you've done with my sister before I leave. You have my word. Now, let's see. The dragon paused for a moment. 2 bodies I have, though both joined in one. The longer I wait, the more I run. What am I? But that wasn't your question. You asked where I was going. I changed my question. Do you forfeit? No, that's not fair. Who told you life was fair? Answer my question or you forfeit. 2 bodies, one. The longer I wait, the more I... Is it a wagon? A wagon? How would it be a wagon? Well, if you have 2 people in a wagon, they become one, and if you're riding, then the longer you wait, the longer it runs. I weep for today's youth. Didn't your parents teach you anything about your creators? It's an hourglass, a symbol of Osmodeus, the king of the gods. Is any of this ringing a bell? No, I still think it's a wagon. It's not a wagon, the dragon snapped, slamming his clenched fist into the rocky floor. Calming himself, he returned his attention to the child. But I'll set your mind at ease. I have done nothing with your sister. Had I known there were 2 of you, she'd be here with you. He felt the fear begin to overcome him. Where is she? If the dragon didn't take her, what's happened to her? Is she alive? He felt tears begin to stream down his face. Why'd you bring me here? Let's say I have plans for you. Maybe not today, nor tomorrow. But one day you'll play a valuable part in my grand scheme of things. So I'm to stay here until you have need of me? Demetrix reached down, wrapping his hand around the dagger Maius had given him. Heavens no. You're free to roam. I've no use for one kept out of touch with the world above. You need to be familiar with their customs. What if I refuse to help you? You act like you have a choice. You answered wrong. Your life is mine now. Demetrius glared his hatred at the dragon. I won't help you. You can kill me 1,000 times over, and I'll never do anything you ask. I'm not asking. Without pause, Demetrius threw the dagger. Demetrius drew the dagger and flung it as hard as he could. Charging toward the dragon, he'd escape or he'd kill it. Either way, he'd be free. He'd escape or it would kill him. Either way, he'd be free. The dagger struck, sinking to the hilt in the dragon's eye. It roared in pain as the mythical ore pulled at its core. He fumbled with the blade, trying to pluck it from his ruined socket. Anger flooded him. How did I not smell he had darkstone? Spinning around in the crowded cavern, he sucked in as much air as he could, hoping to catch a whiff of the boy's scent. With tremendous force, he exhaled, shooting a nauseous cloud of green vapor into the passageway. Run all you like. I'll find you. It may take me 1,000 years, but we will meet again. Demetrius ran as fast as he could, hoping the blade found its mark. He turned down one of the crossing corridors, feeling his feet leave the ground. His stomach churned with weightlessness, splashing into a dark substance. The liquid forced its way into his mouth. He struggled against its swallowing surface. The cavern grew darker and disappeared. Water slapped against the murky bank, echoing through the trees of the forested alcove. Crickets chirped along the edge, hidden from the birds flying overhead. The battered form of a child rested in the muck, his chest rising slowly with each breath. Demetrius slapped his cheek, knocking the tiny insect from it. Groaning, he rolled over and pushed himself up. Clawing at the muddy soil, he took in the unfamiliar surroundings. He was still in a forest, but the trees looked different. They seemed thicker, greener than the ones he'd grown accustomed to. He got to his feet, dusting large clumps of mud off of him. He was covered head to toe in the soupy mixture. Stepping into the river, he felt the cold surround him. As quickly as he could, he washed the mud away and left the frigid water. The sun warmed his face. Closing his eyes, he took in its warmth, recalling the earlier days. How had things become so complicated in such a short time? He climbed the bank, careful to keep the mud from soiling himself again. The river was a few miles south of home. If it's morning, that should be west. He looked up past the trees to the yellow orb in the sky. It was halfway between the horizon and midday, yet bright enough to be on the rise. Turning away from it, he started walking. If the gods favored him, he would find a familiar terrain. A small slither of hope filling his tiny body, he started walking. And that is the end of Chapter 5. So we will resume with the next chapter next Sunday. Again, Order of the Trident 2 is finished and is available in pre-order form on Kindle. And then here pretty soon I will let it go live in paper format on Amazon. The official release will be at VisionCon, which will be February 24th in Branson, Missouri. I will see you guys there. I'm going to have plenty of copies. I believe it's going to be a fun show. I've got a lot of other stuff I'm supposed to do there. I'm hosting a panel, which is going to be a new thing for me to do. I've assisted in a few of them, but I've never hosted one. Overall, can't wait. Let's have a good time. Hit the Mojo Party up. I usually have a hand in helping them with that as well. So let's make it happen and just enjoy it all. So, I'm going to go get some dinner. You guys have a good night.